The six-part series called Pistol, a series and story about the Sex Pistols is out. I've seen it all. I got my review. Let's do this.
5, 4, 2,
Uno.
Polly back here on the Latino Slant. Make sure you watch the entire video to get my entire review and recommend some other videos here on this channel. Make sure you are subscribed, and I hope everyone is doing well. One of the pillars of this channel is music. And recently, we've been documenting Chicano music, Chicano punk music of the 70s and 80s. So it's with huge enthusiasm, as well as being a Danny Boyle fan, that I got to check out the show. And I did binge it over, I would say over a few days. It's only 6 episodes. And it is on FX, Hulu, I believe. It is produced by Disney. So let me also tell you, let's break down what we're going to do in this video. I'm going to give you my overall first impressions of the entire series. Then we're going to go through each episode, just title and description. Maybe some stuff will pop out. Then I also will recommend, and we go through a Rolling Stone article on what was fact, what was fiction. And that's it. That's this video. So my overall impressions of Pistol is, this is pretty good. For a music biopic, which tends to get bogged down in first they find their voice, then it's their first this, then they meet up the band, then there's the drug addiction. For that being said, I found this storytelling to be pretty exciting, especially if you're into that Danny Boyle cinema style of storytelling, which I am. Train Spotting, also to Slumdog Millionaire. So I was in. I was actually very surprised, pleasantly surprised with the overall storytelling and the beginning and final episode of this 6-part episode. What else can I tell you about that? If you're a music fan, you're gonna love this. If you're a punk rock fan, you're gonna hate this, because at the end of the day, why are you going to be doing a story on punk rock kids who hated everything? There's kind of the hypocrisy right there. Now, I will also say that Johnny London himself was not part of this process. He, in fact, tried to sue his bandmates in using the music, and there was a whole kerfuffle there. I will put a link to his latest interview so you can see that. But I'm going to tell you, Johnny, right now, you actually come off looking pretty good in this. Pretty good to where at the end, I liked you. And I don't think I like you very much in real life, but I don't know you, just some of this the way you come off. Your interviews, I will say, are pretty riveting. Okay, let's get to now. So those are my impressions. It is, I will say also that because it is there's 6 episodes, there's only a few things I found to be filler and unnecessary. For the 6 episodes, I got a great look at all the main characters, and I thought it was I thought it was very interesting that they used 6 episodes to tell this story. So let's go to the episodic review. Then this is the overview. Now, let me tell you right now, this is based off of Steve Jones' memoir, Lonely Boy, Tales from a Sex Pistol. It is a limited series, so this is it. It tells the story of the band of a spotty, noisy, working-class kids with no future who shock the boring, corrupt establishment to its core, threaten to bring down the government and change music and culture forever. It is out right now. Like I said, it is directed by Danny Boyle. Okay, 6 episodes here. Here's the name of each episode: Cloak of Invisibility, Rotten, Bodies, Pretty Vacant, Nancy and Sid, and Who Killed Bambi. Now let's run through the first couple of episodes here. I will say that Cloak of Invisibility and Rotten both refer to the two main characters in the Sex Pistols, Steve Jones and Johnny Rotten. The Cloak of Invisibility refers to Steve Jones's invisibility as a working class kid, as a thief in his home too. He was abused, and just how his story is a lot of like of these other disenfranchised youth of working class, lower class people in the UK. I thought it was fantastic. A lot I didn't know. I don't know these guys' stories, and it makes sense that their upbringing kind of creates this great music. He didn't know how to play music. I found that interesting. I don't know how much of Chrissy Hine teaching him was true to fact, but her storyline is in this. And then in Rotten, at the end of episode 1, where they say, Steve Jones, you're really not a singer, because he has bad stage fright. In enters Johnny Rotten. And the actor that plays Johnny Rotten is fantastic. I would say it's a near perfect performance. I would say that I was never afraid or fearful of this actor's portrayal as Johnny Rotten as I am of the real Johnny Rotten. I really feel there's something wonderfully disturbed about Johnny Rotten. And here, not so much, but it was really good. The actors are just top notch, including the woman that plays Chrissy Hind. Now, as we go along in this series, they are trying to get their act together just as a band that can play cohesive music, writing songs, different members coming in. This show is not kind of Malcolm McLaren, who was their manager, and they're kind of kind of controlled their whole look and everything. So that is another great dramatic device in this show. In their story is just what an ass Malcolm McLaren was, and God rest his soul. But man, he was good and he was bad, and I think that makes for great storytelling. It makes for great storytelling, and Steve Jones was definitely very close to him at a certain point. Number 3, the third episode is called Bodies, and I have to tell you, it is the most disturbing in what is a very adult show. Let me just read this for you. As Steve and Chrissy Hine begin to make more than just music, the Pistols begin to wreak anarchy in the UK. Johnny Rotten takes deeper inspiration from a grieving young woman. So I don't want to spoil this for you. Just warning, spoiler warnings on anything, and they give you guys warnings as well. Anything that has to do with suicide, self harm, um, just very vile situations. Bodies and how the song Bodies, the inspiration behind Bodies, it's all in there in this episode, and it's fairly disturbing. It's good storytelling. It's very Danny Boyle. So I was actually that, and in the abuse of Steve Jones by his stepfather, I was very surprised that Disney let the filmmaker go there. So it's strong in vision, and it makes sense because this is Ross, the working class, um, and that was pretty real. That was pretty real. Okay, so we move on to and they call each episode track, which I thought was cool. Episode 4, Pretty Vacant, which is probably my favorite Sex Pistols song. The idyllic success is soon obliterated when the band shocks the nation. The media frenzy causes egos to explode. Steve is emotionally blackmailed by Malcolm into replacing bassist Glenn Matlock with Sid Vicious. Beginning of the end. And you got to remember, too, guys, the Sex Pistols were only around for a maximum of 3 years. And that is the formation, Johnny Rotten let go, Sid Vicious coming in as a bass player, then taking over as a lead singer. and then his suicide. And that was the end. Once Sid took his life, that was the end of what we know as the Sex Pistols. So things I didn't know. I didn't know that Johnny Rotten and Sid Vicious were very close. Were friends before this. That was great drama. There is a lot of great drama in this, and we'll get to that Rolling Stone issue article on what was really kind of non-factual. Even though the Rolling Stone article points out that they stuck to a lot of more facts than if anything. Okay, so moving on to the final two episodes. Track 5, Nancy and Sid. Track 6, Who Killed Bambi? We have the Sid and Nancy, and they change it Nancy and Sid story, which is a very turbulent one of drug addiction and accidental deaths and suicide. Mm, if Yoko was to John, Sid was to Sid. Excuse me, Nancy was to Sid, and it was all a very disturbing and tumultuous experience. And as storytelling, you know, you can't really write, you can't really make this stuff up. It's stuff of legends, and they were hopelessly, and at least on Sid's part, was hopelessly in love with her. He was a more in this storytelling. He was a more of an innocent. In this storytelling, Nancy was his first that he was ever, as far as intimate with, and she loved that. But she was a, you know, she led a hard life, and it was really, she led a hard life, and it really showed in the storytelling, and then with Chrissy Hine trying to take just a just trying to show some pity for her in what she could. What again? I didn't know Chrissy Hine's involvement was in real life with the Sex Pistols, so I was pleasantly surprised. Whether a lot of it was true or not, it was good storytelling. I think the Pretenders were a fantastic band. They're still around. Um, I do think there was, by not Chrissy's role, but by the roles of Westwood and the women that ran the sex shop called Sex, a little modern virtue signaling in what they were trying to do. And I get it. Back then, they were anti-establishment, and in this, I don't even know if they had the term the male gaze. If I'm wrong, back then, guys, and that was around. I had not heard of that until kind of like just in recent times. And for me, that took me out a little bit. I wasn't too crazy about that storyline. It was minor, and it did follow two. Yeah, it wasn't my favorite part of the series, but again, it wasn't a big part of the series in so as much as the balance of creating chaos, going anti-establishment, and becoming friends, and becoming a band, which they were never able to do. They had some love-hate relationships with each other, and in subsequent years have reunited. But in this episode, and in this timeline, it's 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 pretty violent as far as just all the relationships, and they're incredibly young. Let's also say that how incredibly young these men were, and to make the music and to influence music as they did, they accomplished what they set out. Which you can't say that about a lot of bands. You can't. You cannot also uh, understate how important the Sex Pistols are in music rock and roll history. They really it, they shook up the music establishment at that time, if not also the UK political establishment at that time, but definitely global music. It's never the same again. Okay, I want to get also to the ending was called "Who Killed Bambi," I will say that the final episode was incredible. It was far more touching than I thought it would be. And I really appreciated that in the storyline, into where it showed it showed some very vulnerable moments with the guys. And I think that was great. I think that was great storytelling in Danny in great choices in what Danny Boyle ultimately gave us with these 6 episodes. You can't say that about a lot of 6 episodic, 8 episodic limited stories. The thing is, too, the story's already there. We talked about this. Some of these things you just can't make up. The fact that these, which I didn't know, the fact that the Sex Pistols did a charity benefit for a Christmas concert for the firemen and their families in a certain part of the UK. I thought that was extraordinary, smart to end it on that. And then I'm sorry for the spoiler, but the way they ended this series was very touching, where everyone's still alive and somewhat cohesive. And it was a moment of clarity in the band, to where even Rotten told Sid, no cursing tonight. These are kids and this and that. And I was just like, that was wonderful. That was wonderful. That was wonderful. Now, let's get really, that is my overall review and quick episodic breakdown. If you're a music fan, please check it out. If you're a Danny Boyle fan, please check it out. Let me know what you think. Now, let's get to the Rolling Stone article, Pistol Fact Checking the Sex Pistols mini series. And I will have both articles in the video description. And I'm so glad that I found this. And the FX series sticks closer to the historical record than recent efforts by Motley Crue, Queen, and Elton John, but still veers away from reality at certain points. And here is a picture of the actors. Cindy Chandler as Chrissy Hine. I thought she was just really good. And Tallulah Riley as Vivian Westwood in the back. Thomas Brody Sangster as Malcolm McLaren. And let me tell you, that actor was fantastic as Malcolm, because I liked him at the beginning and despised him at the end. Then Toby Wallace as Steve Jones. A little bit of movie trivia real quick. The actor playing Malcolm McLaren was the kid actor. He was Liam Neeson's stepson, who became a drummer in the movie Love Actually. That is the same actor, and I was just kind of blown away by that. Okay, so I think it's a good read. What I would just want to get to are, they have 8 items where they say that it just didn't happen. Number 1, Glenn Matlock enters the story too soon. He was a bass player. He got a lot of smack for liking the Beatles too much. For storytelling purposes, that happens all the time. They truncate history for dramatic points during the timeline of storytelling. So I'm fine with that. Jones wasn't arrested for stealing gear from a Hawkwind concert. No, he was a repeat offender. And that's fine. Again, the essence is the fact that he was a criminal who was headed down a dark path of becoming a long-term criminal. And Malcolm did save him from a lengthy prison sentence. Number 3, Chrissy Hine's role in Jones's private life is greatly embellished. Yeah, I figured that. And I know why they did that, because you need a love story, an unconventional one in this regard, to elevate our main protagonist, and that is Steve Jones. To elevate our main protagonist to a likable level, not that he's just a complete teenage wasted youth. So I understand why they did that. But I figured that it was a little greatly embellished there. Okay. Now, number 4, Chrissy Hine didn't almost marry Steve Jones. And it was, in fact, Johnny Rotten. But again, going to, there's two things with that. She wanted to stay in the country. So she did try to, in fact, recruit the Sex Pistols to get her married so she can have her visa. It just wasn't Steve Jones. For storyline, Danny Boyle chose it to be Steve Jones, and it worked because also too, the betrayal that Steve Jones slept around. It makes for good storytelling for dramatic purposes. Again, this is inspired by true events. They even say that. Number 5, Steve Jones didn't fire Glenn Matlock. Okay. In the storyline, it's in this show, it's well established that this is Steve's band, for better or for worse. Okay, I'm fine with that. Number 6, Sid Vicious does indeed play at least some bass on Nevermind the Bullocks. Okay, even though the same. Number 7, Nancy Spurgeon's introduction to Sid Vicious happened a bit more differently. And again, check that out. We'll get into that later on. I mean, you can get into that later on. In the story, in the series, I had no problem with that. I didn't even have a problem with Chrissie Hynde being more in the story, because you got to do that sometimes for dramatic purposes. And if it's good storytelling, which this is, I went with it. Number 8, Jones, Hine, and Paul Cook didn't drug Nancy Spungen and put her on a plane to America. They did send her off. I guess they didn't drug her, and I am happy to hear that, because that is that's kind of let's read this one, because this did bother me. This was towards the end of the series. The addition of Nancy Spungen into the world of Sex Pistols caused so much turmoil that Malcolm cooked up a scheme for his secretary to take her to Heathrow, force her on a plane back to America. We didn't get as far as Heathrow. She was terrified of getting on a plane without drugs. There you go. So it didn't happen. When Nancy saw Malcolm and Boogie arrive, she ran down the street. So, she probably saw it coming. The three of them followed and caught her from 20 yards out. I could see these 4 people all screaming at each other. The plan was unsuccessful, and she remained in England. So this is a good article to get some more of the facts down. That's pretty cool. All right. Well, there you have it. The full video we just did. I gave you my overview of the series as a whole. It's thoroughly enjoyable. We did a breakdown of every real quick breakdown of every of all 6 episodes. Talked about different storylines, and then we talked about this Rolling Stone article. I will have all links in the video description. I would love, after you watch this television show, I would love to hear your thoughts, especially if you're a music fan, a fan of biopics. A lot of people aren't fan of biopics to begin with. I get that. All right, everybody, please also check out all my other musical videos on this channel. We cover a lot. And that is it for now. Wherever you're at, guys, keep your fight and keep your slant muy, muy fuerte. Paz y dale gas.
Come on, y'all. Come on, y'all. Come on, y'all. The slant?
Yeah, but isn't this the unplugged version? I don't know. I think it's the unplugged version.
All right, Polly, let's go.